Manage isolation levels. Nagbago ng lahat sa'yo. Oh, oh. Exercise 1. Managing concurrency with read uncommitted. An isolation label protects a specified transaction from other transactions to prevent problems that can arise due to concurrent access of data. A transaction in SQL Server ensures that group of operation is processed as a unit. For example, you can define a banking transaction and perform data modification to create one account and debit another as a single unit of work. If the transaction succeeds, all the modifications that you made in the transaction are committed in the database. In the case of the failure of your transaction that must be rolled back, all your changes to the data are erased. Each transact SQL statement such as insert, update, or delete is executed as transaction and is an implicit transaction. In user-defined or explicit transactions, you need to group the statements of the transaction between a begin transaction and a commit transaction close. In case if the transaction fails, you can provide the rollback transaction statement to erase all data modifications made from the beginning of the transaction. You can set the transaction isolation label for all transactions in a session. Setting the transaction isolation label helps you to specify the default locking behavior for all statements in a session. In other words, you can use locks to prevent update conflicts. When you are in the process of changing data, you can prevent other users from reading or modifying the data. For example, consider you are calculating the average of a set of value in a group and you want to ensure that other transactions do not modify the set of data in the group. In such cases, you can request the SQL Server to hold locks on the data. The common types of locks include shared. In general read operations, acquired shared lock. When a transaction acquires shared lock on a resource, another transaction can also acquire a shared lock even though the first transaction has not completed. Exclusive. In general write operations, acquire an exclusive lock. Data modification statements such as insert, update, and delete use the exclusive lock. Update. The SQL Server applies update locks on the rows when they are selected for update. When the transaction isolation label is set to the highest, the locks are held longer and are more restricted. The different transaction isolation labels include read committed. This option specifies that statements cannot read data that has been modified but not committed by other transactions. Setting this label directs SQL Server to use shared locks while reading if read committed snapshot is set to off. Read uncommitted. This option specifies that statements can read data that has been modified and are not committed by other transactions. This is the least isolation label. This is similar to setting no lock on all tables and all select statements in a transaction. Repeatable read. This option specifies that statements cannot read data that has been modified but not committed by other transactions, and other transactions cannot modify data that has been read by the current transaction until the current transaction completes. Setting this label directs the SQL Server to use shared locks until the end of transaction. Snapshot. This option specifies that only the data modifications that are made by other transactions before the beginning of the current transaction are visible to the statements in the current transaction. However, the data modifications made by other transactions after the beginning of the current transaction are not visible to the statements in the current transaction. Setting this option does not request locks when reading data except during recovery of the database. Serializable. This option prevents other users from updating or inserting rows that match the condition in the workflows of the transaction. In this exercise, you will demonstrate transaction by setting isolation label to read uncommitted. Please refer to your course material or use your preferred search engine to research this topic in more detail. Task 1. Demonstrate read uncommitted isolation label. In this task, you will perform the following action. Execute an update statement that updates the row in the DIM product table for the product K110 and rollbacks the transaction after wait time of 20 seconds. Execute a select query simultaneously with the update statement. The select query reads the record for the same product K401 by setting the isolation label as read uncommitted. Demonstrate that due to the read uncommitted isolation label, the select query would read the modified value by the update transaction that was not yet committed. However, rolled back after a 20 seconds delay. Step 1. Ensure that you have powered on the required devices and connect to FlapSQL1 will already connected. Step 2. From the FlapSQL desktop, click Start and click Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. The Connect to Server dialog box appears. From the Server Type drop-down list, click Database Engine. In the server name text box type FlapSQL1, then click Connect. The SQL Server Management Studio window opens. In Object Explorer, expand the databases. Step 4. To select the database from the list of databases, click AdventureWorks DW 2016 CTP3. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Step 5. The new query pane opens. Step 6. Type the following query in the new query pane. Just copy the code and paste. The given query creates a new table named DimProduct.tmp with the records imported from the DimProduct table in the AdventureWorks DW 2016 CTP3 database. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 7. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Then type the following query in the new query pane. Just copy the code. The given query selects product K and list price from the DimProduct temp table for the product K401. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Notice the value of list price column in the result set. Step 8. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Then type the following query in the new query pane. Copy it. Then paste. The given query updates the value of list price in DimProduct temp. For the product K401, the query uses the begin transaction statement and updates the DimProduct temp table in the AdventureWorks DW 2016 CTP3 database. It then rollbacks the transaction using the rollback run after a 20-second delay. Step 9. To create a new query from the query ribbon, type the following query in the new query pane. Just execute it. Then there's a 20 seconds delay, so let's proceed to step 9, new query. Then just copy the code and paste. The given query selects the list price column value in the DimProduct temp table for the product K401. The statement uses read uncommitted isolation label to specify that the select statement can read rows that have been modified by other transactions but not yet committed. Press F5 to execute query in step 8 and within 10 seconds execute the above select query in this step 9. Let's back to step 8 and then here we go. And just wait for 10 seconds. Note, due to the read uncommitted isolation label, the select query in step 9 would read the modified value by the update transaction in step 8 that was not yet committed, leading to dirty read. Let's go for step 9. Then let's execute it. And the query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 10. Navigate the query pane that contains the update transaction is specified in step 8. Find the rollback trans statement executing successfully after 20 seconds. The number of rows affected by the transaction will shown only after the process completes. This is the number of rows affected, 1 row only. Next. Exercise 2. managing concurrency with repeatable read. In this exercise, you will manage concurrency using repeatable read isolation label. Please refer to your course material or use your prepared search engine to research this topic in more detail. Task 1. Demonstrate repeatable reads with select statements. In this task, you will perform the following actions. Select all the columns values from the dim product for the product K401 by setting the isolation label as repeatable read and rollbacks the transaction after a wait time of 20 seconds. The repeatable read isolation label specifies that no other transactions can modify the record with the product K401 until the execution of the select statement in the current transaction completes. Update the content of dim product for the K401 by setting the isolation label as repeatable read. Then demonstrate that due to the repeatable read isolation label set for the select transaction, the update transaction is forced to wait for 20 seconds because of the exclusive lock uses on the product K401 row until the select transaction completes the process. Step 1. Type the following statement in a new query window to read records from the dim product table for the product K401. Just copy the query, then paste it in the query pane. Then this code, the query uses begin transaction statement and sets the isolation label to repeatable read. This specifies that no other transactions can modify the record with the product K401 until the execution of the select statement in the current transaction completes. Step 2. Go for step 2. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. For the purpose of this demonstration, execute an update statement that updates the same row which the select query reads in step 1 in the dim product table. To update the content of dim product for the product K401, type the following query statement in the new query window. Just copy it, then paste it here. Step 3. Press F5 to execute the query in step 1 and within 10 seconds execute the update query in step 2. Just go back for step 1. Then let's execute it. Then let's wait for the 20 seconds delay. And due to the repeatable read isolation label set for the select transaction, the update transaction in step 2 is forced wait for 20 seconds because of the exclusive locks used on the product K401. The update transaction execute after the select transaction completes the process after a delay of 20 seconds. Here we go. Let's check the step 1. Here's the step 1. Step 2. Step 4. Navigate to the query window that contains the select query in step 1. The query in step 1 would display the old committed values before update after 20 seconds. This is the query in step 1. Task 2. Demonstrate repeatable read with insert statements. In this task, you will perform the following actions. Create table name dim product temp and import records from dim product. Select records from dim product temp by setting the isolation label as repeatable read to ensure that no other data until the execution of the select statement in the current transaction completes. Execute an insert query by inserting a new record to demonstrate that the new rows are not locked by the select transaction with the repeatable read isolation label. Step 1. Type the following query in the new query window. Then just copy it. Then paste it here. The given query imports records from the dim product table into a new table named dim product temp. Press F5 to execute the query. The query executes successfully and the number of rows affected is displayed in the message window. There we go, 395 rows affected. Step 2. Type the following statement in a new query window to read records from the dim product temp table. Just copy the code. Paste it. The query uses begin transaction statement and sets the isolation label to repeatable read. This specifies specifies that no other transactions can modify data until the execution of the select statement in the current transaction completes. Step 3. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query and type the following statement in the New Query window to insert a new record into the DEM product temp table. Step 4. Press F5 to execute the query in Step 2 and within 10 seconds execute the insert query in Step 3. Let's proceed to Step 2 and just execute it. The insert query executes immediately without waiting for the completion of select query in Step 2. This is because the insert query inserts a new record and the new rows are not locked by the select transaction in Step 2. Only the existing records are locked by the select transaction in Step 2 due to the repeatable read isolation label. Step 5. Navigate to the query window that contains the select transaction in Step 2. The query in Step 2 would display all existing values before the new insert after 20 seconds. This is Step 2. Task 3. Demonstrate a repeatable read with update statements. In this task, you will perform the following actions. Select records from the DEM product table into a temporary table named DEM product temp. Select records from the DEM product temp table for the product case 212 and 213 by setting the isolation label as repeatable read and roll back the transaction after a delay of 20 seconds. Update the DEM product temp table for the product K214. Demonstrate that the repeatable read isolation label set on the select transaction does only lock the rows for the product case 212 and 213. Hence, the update transaction executes immediately as it updates only the contents of the product K214. Step 1. Type the following query in the new query window. Query. Let's copy it and paste it here. The given query imports records from the DEM product table into a new table named DEM product temp. Press F5 to execute the query. The query executes successfully and the result and the number of rows affected is displayed in the messages window. 195 rows affected. Step 2. Type the following statement in the new query window to read the records from the DEM product temp table. Just copy it, then paste it here. The query uses begin transaction statement and sets the isolation label to repeatable read. This specifies that no other transactions can modify data until the execution of the select statement in the current transaction completes. The given query reads records of the product case 212 and 213. Step 3. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following statement in the new query window to update the list price column value for the product K214 in the DEM product temp table. Let's copy and paste it here. Step 4. Press F5 to execute the query in Step 2 and within 10 seconds execute the update query in Step 3. Let's go back for Step 2. Then click Execute. Then let's wait for 10 seconds. There. Execute. The update query executes immediately without waiting for the completion of select query in Step 2. This is because the update query updates the record with the product K214 that is not read by the select query in Step 2. Only the records with the product K212 and 214 are locked by the select query in Step 2 due to the repeatable read isolation label. Step 5. Navigate to the query window that contains the select transaction in Step 2. The query in Step 2 would display the resultant records in the results pane after 20 seconds delay. Oh, here we go. Next. We are already done. Then let's go for summary. I covered the following activities in this module: managing concurrency with read uncommitted and managing concurrency with repeatable read. That's all.